Today we're going to talk about synthetic fertilizers and why they work so goddamn well, and why they're terrible for your plants and the planet, and maybe, just maybe, how you can break out of this toxic relationship. Thank you for watching. I am Adam from Dirty Roots Berlin. We're going to start by talking about why synthetic fertilizers work so well. Synthetic fertilizers are almost always coming in the forms of mineral salts. And those mineral salts can be dissolved into water and then be utilized by your plants immediately. In order for a plant to get nutrients, that nutrients has to enter into the plant in some way. Now, there are things like foliar sprays, in other words, being able to enter nutrients through the leaves, but in general, most of the nutrients comes in through the roots, and more specifically, the tips at the ends of the roots. And the way that that happens is when those nutrients get dissolved into water and that water passes into the root system, it carries the nutrients along with it. This is why they need to be dissolvable in water in order for a plant to be able to utilize any form of nutrients. So synthetic fertilizers are salts that are easily dissolved into water, and that's why they work so well, because almost immediately your plant starts utilizing the nutrients that it gets. However, this is akin to drinking copious amounts of energy drinks in lieu of actual sleep and rest. It may work for a while, and it may work in the long term, but at a very grave cost. Every time you're utilizing these synthetic fertilizers, which come in the form of mineral salts, these salts are going to be left behind in the soil itself. This salt buildup can do damage to the roots of your plants, and it also severely damages microbial populations in the soil. So the more you rely on synthetic fertilizers, the more that you have microbial die-off, which means your plants continue to rely on you more and more to get any form of sustenance and nutrients. I mean, you thought your last relationship was toxic. So the more you use synthetic fertilizers, the more your soil starts to degrade, which means you're going to need to use more synthetic fertilizers because the bio or organic fertilizers are less and less effective. But it doesn't end there. So sure, when you use synthetic fertilizers, some of the salt remains in the soil, but some of it will also run off every time that you water. The more that you use synthetic fertilizers, the more that runoff enters into our waterways. So I want to really drive this point home. There's an area in the Gulf of Mexico that is the size of New Jersey. This area is a dead zone due to fertilizer runoff. In other words, nothing can live there because too much fertilizer has run off into the water. While it's true, most of this is from industrial farming. 2% of global emissions comes from fertilizer use. The use of synthetic fertilizers releases nitric oxide into the atmosphere, which is 300 times worse than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. So the total greenhouse gas emissions is greater than the entire aviation industry. So every time that you're dumping that Miracle-Gro onto your soil, you're not only destroying your soil, but you're also heating up the planet in the process. So the way we combat this is by switching over to a more organic approach. But as I've said in a previous episode, your plants can't eat organic matter. They need soil microbes in order to break down organic matter so that your plants can then utilize it. The best way to start this process is by introducing some form of soil microbe-rich input, whether that's compost that you make at home or something you buy from a store, or even really good soil that you just happen to gather from outside. Either way, starting to introduce these soil microbes is going to make a huge difference. You also then have to realize that this does take time. It can take anywhere from 3 months to start seeing results. So this isn't necessarily going to be something that you do cold turkey, but you slowly switch from what you're currently using. Make sure that you finish up what you have. If you've got leftover fertilizer, there's no good reason to just let it go to waste and throw it down the drain, but slowly start to transition away from what you have into something that's going to be much more environmentally friendly. The best way to do that is to introduce that soil biology. In future episodes, I'm going to talk to you more specifically about easy ways to do that at home, even if you're living in a small space such as an apartment. So let's recap. Synthetic fertilizers work really fucking good, like sugar or crack cocaine. But just because they work doesn't mean that they're good for you or your plants or the planet as a whole. So if you want long-term health instead of short-term quick fixes, then you need to start thinking about soil biology and the health of your soil overall. And if you really care about the planet, every bag of fertilizer you don't buy means cleaner air, cleaner waterways, less pollution and environmental destruction. And if you've had any experience with switching over from synthetic fertilizers to using a more organic approach, please let us know. We'd love to hear how that journey has worked out for you as well. So thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.